Hi, I'm Lynn Thompson. This is the Rare Book Cafe for the last Saturday of February 2021. And this is the story behind the story, in which we look at how books frequently defy all odds to actually get published, and even more so to get noticed and become classics. And this year I want to move back a little bit in history to a 19th century author, Victor Hugo, who lived from 1802 to 1885, and who in the course of 83 years lived a life so complicated and filled with conflict that it's a wonder he could write a grocery list, much less a long stack of extremely popular novels, most of which are still in print today. He was born to a general who served under Napoleon and a Catholic royalist mother. In Victor Hugo's 83 years, the government changed 6 times between monarchists and Republicans. He spent nearly 20% of his life in exile. In his views, Hugo moved from Catholicism to deism, from monarchist peer of the realm to Republican senator. Yet through it all, he retained the adoration of the French as one of their greatest writers of any age. His first collection of poems was so impressive, the king gave him a lifetime pension. Hugo was 20. His first novel came out when he was 21, and he published 5 more collections of poetry through the 1830s. He could have died then and been remembered as one of the first rank of French lyric poets. At 26, Hugo published The Day of a Condemned Man, which influenced writers from Dostoevsky to Dickens to Camus. He wrote hit plays about historical figures. His 1831 novel, Notre Dame de Paris, lives on as The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Set in the Middle Ages as people struggled to adapt to whirling change, the book presents the arrival of the printing press as the death of religion and architecture by removing knowledge from its custodians and opening it to any and all. In the mid-1830s, Hugo began work on a sweeping novel of social misery and injustice. It took 17 years to finish and appeared in 1862 as Les Misérables. Critics panned it, the public loved it, and within a short time, issues it raised were being debated in the National Assembly. The book sold out in hours in most cities, backed by a 6-month marketing campaign unusual for its time. For years, the Guinness Book of World Records listed the book as the cause of history's shortest correspondence, in which Hugo, wondering about sales, allegedly telegraphed his publisher, ? The publisher, legend had it, replied, ! At 39, Hugo was given a peerage and elected to the French Academy. Voters sent him to Parliament in the new Second Republic of 1848. He campaigned for free universal education, voting for all Frenchmen, and ending poverty. He launched a campaign to end the death penalty that won him worldwide fame and condemnation. After the coup that brought Napoleon III to power, Hugo went into exile in the British Channel Islands, and he couldn't even fit in there. He was forced to leave the island of Jersey for the island of Guernsey after backing a newspaper critical of Queen Victoria. He campaigned to save the lives of Emperor Maximilian of Mexico and the American abolitionist John Brown. But when Napoleon III issued a political amnesty in 1859, Hugo turned it down. There were strings attached. He could come home, but he would have to be very well behaved. As soon as Bonaparte was overthrown in 1871, Hugo returned to Paris just in time for the Commune. He survived it by living on animals the Paris Zoo gave him and the disaster of the Franco-Prussian War, before retreating again to Guernsey in 1873. When he returned to France a few years later, he was promptly elected to the Third Republic's Senate, where he was considered an ineffective gadfly and was distracted by health and family problems. Nearly all his children died before him, and one was declared insane and institutionalized. Hugo's 80th birthday was a national celebration. The parade past his Paris home lasted for 6 hours. And when he died 3 years later, the nation plunged into mourning. His funeral drew 2 million people, and he was interred in a crypt at the Pantheon with Dumas and later Zola. He published 56 books in his life. Another 22 were issued posthumously. Few have had greater influence after death. In 1886, the Berne Copyright Convention, which created an international system for protecting the intellectual property rights of authors, went into effect. It was Hugo's creation. He was also discovered after he died to have been a first-class artist, leaving behind a collection of over 4,000 drawings, the equal of any in his time. In modern times, we've seen many works by famous writers translated naturally as films. Hugo's works were not only turned into movies, but his lyricism inspired music. Over 1,000 works to date, including over 100 operas. Rigoletto, Ernani, La Gioconda, and Lucrezia Borgia remain in the modern repertory. Music, he wrote, expresses that which cannot remain silent and which cannot be put into words. The modern-day musical Les Mis opened in Paris in 1980 and London 5 years later. For a book earlier critics condemned as popular fiction, the stage show was condemned by critics for popularizing a literary classic. It is the second longest-running West End play ever and ran for 16 years on Broadway. In 1959, Charles de Gaulle's newly elected Fifth Republic government, to underline its continuity with French democratic values, issued a new currency bearing Victor Hugo's likeness. And that's the story behind the man who wrote Les Mis. I'm Lynn Thompson. This is the story behind the story, a weekly feature on the Rare Book Cafe, and I'll see you again next week.